geometry lesson is going to be over one-dimensional distance and midpoint. So we're going to talk about distance first. So this first little paragraph where we got some fill in the blank says, it takes just one number to specify an exact location on a number line. For this reason, a number line is sometimes called a one-dimensional coordinate system. And then it says the mile markers on a straight highway turn the highway into a one-dimensional coordinate system. You guys know what they're talking about. Every once in a while it says what mile marker you're at, right? It's just measuring the miles that the road is. So even though it might have little turns to it, it's not always exactly straight, but we're comparing it to a number line where it just has some specific points. Okay? This next piece, we're just going to think about this piece of information for a little bit, and then we're going to come back to it at the bottom of this page. It says that on a straight highway, the exit for Arthur Avenue is at mile marker 3. The exit for Collingwood Road is at mile marker 43. The State Highway Administration plans to put an exit between the two roads as long as the roads are at least 38 miles apart. Should the Highway Administration put in an exit? So this one, if we're thinking about it, we should already kind of know the answer, right? Whether or not they are that distance apart. But we're about to go over how to find distance on a number line. So for right now, we're just going to write that we're going to learn about distance. On the problems below. And then we'll be able to draw a picture and prove our answer to this question. Dealing with some real world scenario, they first are going to have us deal with it on just a normal number line. So this next piece says, find the distance between 2 points on a number line. The distance between 2 points on a line in one dimension is found by finding the absolute value of their difference. In short, what we're doing here is subtracting where we ended up by where we started, and then we take its absolute value. So the formula for distance is this right here. Distance is equal to our end point minus our start point, but we're going to take the absolute value of it. All right? So using this idea right here, does anybody know what an absolute value is or what it does? What we need it for? So the absolute value are these bars right here. What those do is they measure the distance something is from 0. Or, in short, absolute value will always be positive. You cannot get a negative answer. Absolute value will always be positive. So if I ask you to find the distance between two numbers on a number line, there should never be a negative answer because this is the formula we're going to use. All right, so we're going to use this formula to find our answer for example 1. We're finding the distance between these 2 points. All right, so normally normally we would say that we probably started on the left and went this direction, right? So I'm going to label this as my start and this as my end. Okay? According to the formula, distance between these 2 points should be equal to the absolute value of, do we put our start or our end point first? End. So in this case, my end point is 18. And then the formula says we need to subtract. And then we put our start point. What's my start point? -7. That's all in the absolute values, right? Okay? So because the formula had a negative and our start point had a negative, 2 negatives are going to give us a positive. So I really have 18 plus 7, which is good. So I end up with the absolute value of 25. 25 is already positive, so even though it's in the absolute values, it's not going to change. My answer is just 25. The distance between these 2 points is 25 units. Okay? All right, example 2. Same idea. They say find the distance from B to A. So if they said I'm now finding the distance from B to A, which one is my start point? B. The one they listed first is the start point, which is important, right? Order matters for our formula, which makes 19 our end point. This is our B, this is our A. So we're going from here to here this time. Okay, so now we're going to plug that into our formula. Distance is equal to the absolute value. What's going to be inside of our absolute value this time? 19 minus 274. Very good. Right? And what is 19 minus 274? Negative 255. So it's equal to the absolute value of negative 255. But the absolute value tells us our answer is always going to be positive. So the distance between these two is 255 units. Okay. The reason for that being is because they didn't ask necessarily what the value was. They said how far apart are these two things, right? Just because I started up here, if I was going back to Antonio and I asked how many desks were between us, but I counted backwards, you wouldn't tell me there's -4 desks between us, right? Doesn't matter which way you're going, you would tell me there were 4 desks between us. Okay? So, keeping that in mind, they say, should that highway that they talked about up there at the top, should the highway administration put an exit in? Okay? We have to prove that answer. So let's say they said we needed to draw some picture to show it, right? So here's my highway or my number line. Okay, and this one down here, this one is going to be our first exit, which was Arthur, right? Okay, and where did they say Arthur was at? What mile marker? 3. Okay. Alright, and then maybe right about here is our other exit, which they said was Collingwood. And where did they say that one was? 43. Okay, so I could plug this into the distance formula to prove how far apart they are, right? So what am I going to have? Distance is equal to
43 minus 3.
Absolute value of 43 minus 3. So my distance? 40. And since the absolute value of 40 is already positive, it just stays 40, right? So 40 miles between the two. So, yes, you guys are right. Yes, the exit should be built. Because our distance was 40 miles. And they said it only had to be 38 or more, right? So, which is greater than 38. Alright. Okay, so that's our formula for distance. Yeah. Okay. Flip it over on the back. Alright, so now that we've got distance covered, we're going to talk about midpoint real quick. So again, we're just filling in some blanks here at the top. It says the midpoint between 2 points on a line. If you guys could guess, where do you think the midpoint is? The middle, okay. And we will find the middle because it is the average value of your 2 points. Okay? When they ask us, how do you find the average? Do you guys remember how to find average? Right. And if they're just giving us 2 numbers, all we should have to do is add them and then divide by 2. Very good. So you add, and divide by 2. All right, so this is what our midpoint formula is going to look like. Our 2 points added together, divided by 2. Okay, so now they give us something else to think about here. They say if the exit mentioned on that front page of the notes was to be placed at the midpoint between the 2 roads, what would that mile marker look like? And we're going to answer that once we get to the bottom. All right. Okay, so first example 1 where they give us the points. If I'm going to find the midpoint here, should be x2. What's our x2? 18 or -7 because I didn't really specify, right? But yeah, either one, -7 plus 18 or 18 plus -7, right? When we add order, doesn't really matter, right? Divided by 2. And what is -7 plus 18 or 18 plus -7? 11. So I got 11 divided by 2. And what is 11 divided by 2? 5.5. So the midpoint on this line would be at 5.5. Okay? All right. Example 2. If I go plug this into my formula, what's it going to look like here? Right. 274 plus 19 over 2. Okay, and what is 274 plus 19?
293.
Okay, and 293 divided by 2? Very good. So my middle point, or my midpoint, I mean, is at 146.5. Okay, so going back to that exit scenario from the first page, if that exit mentioned on the front of the notes was to be placed at the midpoint between the 2 roads, what would be the mile marker of that exit? So Just like on the front, we had Arthur here, right? And Collingwood somewhere down here. This one was at 3, and this one was at 43. So, to find the midpoint, what's it going to look like? M equals, good. Which is, what'd you say?
23.
Very good. So we got 46 over 2, which is 23. Oh. No, like, oh, over here. Is that what you're talking about? Oh, right
Yeah.
there. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry to throw you guys off. Okay. 23. Sorry, guys. So our mile marker, if it's going to be at the midpoint, should be at mile marker 23. So that's what we'll put here. So the mile marker